right to our Flag Plus members. We have Julie Fedorchak, currently a member of the public. Hello, everybody, and welcome to What's on Your Mind in a special edition, North Dakota Republican U.S. House primary debate. I'm Scott Hennen, along with the host of the Steve Hallstrom Show and the co-owner of Flag Family Media with me, Steve Hallstrom. Good morning, Steve.
Hi, Scotty.
You are going to be the keeper of who answers first, so let's start on the opening statements, just so everybody's aware of the format. Each of the candidates will have a 1-minute opening statement. Then we'll go right into questions. They have a maximum of 2 minutes to answer the question, and we'll allow 1-minute rebuttals if a specific candidate is mentioned or policy. And then we'll end with 2-minute closing statements before we're done. 2-hour debate, so we're jam-packed. And go ahead with the order for the opening statements.
So we're going to go left to right as we begin here, and we're going to alternate who answers questions first, so everybody gets a chance of being the first and the last and the middle. And so with that, Rick on the left, he'll get the first answer to the first question, and then Alex will get the first answer to the second question, Julie the first to the third, and we'll just kind of keep looping back around for those answers. So that's how the order of the festivities will go today.
I'll be the keeper of the clock, and if you hear this, it just means you're 15 seconds away. Just give you a little warning ahead of the time. We won't be...
I was going to bring my air horn in, but we thought it was a little much.
Won't be shutting microphones off or anything, but best you can respect the time limits. That'd be great. So we're ready?
We are ready for opening statements.
First up, you said, is
Mr. Becker.
Rick Becker.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having me on. Right now in America, we are at a crossroads. We are hurting in a very significant and concerning way. Wide open border, inflation, runaway debt that is a burden to our future generations, our children and our grandchildren. And we have to ask ourselves, how are we going to change this? And the answer is we must send people who are strongly conservative, who stand by their principles, who are fighters, who will change the status quo, because it is exactly the status quo that got us into the situation we are in. We need someone with a proven track record. I am 100% pro-life, 100% pro-gun, 100% pro-border wall, 100% pro-Trump. I have the history of being a conservative, of being a stalwart, steadfast conservative who will always fight for the people of North Dakota. Alex Balazs, you're next.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Scott, Steve. Thanks for having us in today. And Rick, Julie, good to see you today. Thanks for coming today. It's a great day out there, and I got to tell you, there's no better way to get to the voters and talk to you guys about the issues that matter to us. I wouldn't rather spend the day any other way. I think there's some urgent things that need to be taken care of right on the box here when we get into this race and the next in the campaign, and obviously in June and November. Important for me today, we get to have this debate. More importantly, I just drew my elk tag, so pretty excited about that. And I'm looking forward to answering the questions today. Thanks for having us.
Very good. Julie?
Good morning. Thank you, Scott, Steve, Rick, Alex. Good to see you guys. I'm running for Congress because our way of life is in jeopardy as we know it. The borders are a mess. We've got a budget that's $34 trillion in debt. Inflation is crushing our families. I'm the only candidate in this race who has been consistent about a number of things. First of all, I've never switched parties. I've always been a Republican. I have been a consistent fighter on conservative values, and I've delivered on those results for our state. I've fought the Obama and Biden administration when they tried to shut down the Dakota Access Pipeline. I fought the EPA when they tried to shut down our coal, our natural gas, and our oil industries. I have been a conservative fighter who delivered results. I will stand with President Trump. I will work with President Trump on all of these energy issues, on American First energy and ag policies. And I will also work with President Trump on shutting down the border. I will be the one who delivers the results, and I have a record to prove it.
All right, question one goes to all three candidates. Again, all of our questions go to all three, and we'll start in the same order that we did the opening statements. The question for you, starting with Rick Becker, day one on the job, what is your strategy to stop the invasion of illegal immigrants pouring across our border, and would you support a mass deportation effort?
Right. So day one, we have to keep in mind, too, we were running for Congress. We're not running for president. So day one is a type of thing you hear from the executive branch. But I can tell you that as it stands today, tomorrow, and on day one when I'm in Congress, I will stand for funding a border wall, stand for funding border security 100%. The way we can do that as a congressman is to hold those purse strings. That's the power of Congress. What we can do is say we will not fund these budgets, these things that the Biden administration so desperately want, until we get funding of the border. You stand fast on that. We have leverage, but yet we're giving it up. The Biden administration is at fault for having the wide open border, and the Republicans, the weak-kneed Republicans who will bend for fear of political ramifications, are allowing it to happen. We need to get people in there that will stand firm and say, no, we will not fund any of these other things until the border is secure.
Would you support a mass deportation
Absolutely.
effort?
Mass deportation is day one as well.
All right, next question is for Alex Balazs. Same question. If you want me to repeat it, just let me know.
No, I got it. Every one of us should be angry about what the Biden administration has done to create this chaos at our border. Democrats are solely responsible for the drugs, illegals, and crime coming into our country. Period. We need to secure the border, and we need to deport. It's not that hard to do. You've heard me say it before. If we give our law enforcement, take the chokers off them and let them work, like this administration has held them back, they can get it done in no time. We have the means to shut the border down. I got to tell you, I'm the only candidate here who's worked on the border. I have the experience working with Border Patrol, ICE, and state and local law enforcement. I've worked alongside our allies against the drug cartels in Latin America, and we've got to stop this invasion right now, and that's on day one. So it's pretty low-hanging fruit, but we've got to do it with the president on day one.
And again, the last question as part of that was, would you support a mass deportation effort?
Absolutely.
All right. Julie Fedorchak, you're next.
Thank you. First of all, we have to elect President Trump. That's job number one from now until the election. President Trump will secure the border. I will stand with him in securing the border on day 1, 2, 3, however many days it takes, because we all know it doesn't just happen on day one. It didn't get this way overnight, and it's not going to happen on day one, but President Trump is by far the most important resource we have. Interestingly, a few years ago, the North Dakota legislature voted to support President Trump on the building of the wall, and my opponent, Rick Becker, voted against that. So it's interesting to hear him say today that he will be 100% in favor of that. I will be firm on the border issue. We have to stop this hemorrhaging of new folks into our country, illegals, drug cartels, folks who are human trafficking, known terrorists. I mean, our country is being infiltrated by so many folks that we don't know that are doing serious damage and causing a security threat in all of our communities throughout the country. So we have to get that under control. That's step number one before we can do anything else. And yes, I would also support the deportation.
Rick, you were mentioned specifically on a vote in the legislature. You got a minute to respond.
You bet. Well, it's interesting, unexpected that Julie would be using the tactics of the country club Republicans at that twist thing. So I'm glad she brought it up. Here's the scoop. It's a resolution we had in the legislature that would tell our congressional delegation we want them to support funding of the wall. Okay, so it didn't carry any weight. The thing that was so maddening about it, despite me being 100% pro-border security, pro-border wall, is that our senators, Senator John Hoeven, just voted prior to this resolution in the state legislature, voted to go along with the Pelosi-Schumer funding budget bill, which included nothing for securing the border, nothing for the wall. So for us as legislators, state legislators, to say, gosh, we sure wish our delegation would do it. I was ticked off. I was not going to have any part of it. I'm not going to play these little games and try and make peace with our delegation if they're not doing the right thing. You stand firm at all times.
All right, second question. We'll begin with Alex on this one. Federal debt is now at approximately $34.6 trillion. We add $1 million of interest to that number every 30 seconds. If you were king or queen for a day, what would you do to shrink the debt? Alex, starting with you.
Well, since 22% of our national budget every day is in discretionary spending, you can start right there. There are mandatory things you have to fund. We've got to look at those 12 budget lines and get those funded as Congress. That's our job. But there's a lot of fluff in there you can cut. So let's just start at our senior level. So we saw an increase since since Obama came in office, of our senior and senior level positions in the government. We don't need that many to start with. And if you get rid of that, you can get people back to work. The other piece of that is they just increased that fluff. So if we take off that discretionary spending, if you look at every single budget line and stop omnibus spending, do single budget lines, we can look at those, we can clean them up, and we can do the mandatory stuff we need to do. But you're not going to get there in one day. You've got to decide you have a balanced budget. We've got to make that our mandate. And when people want to throw something else out there, like additional spending, you got to say no. Even if it looks enticing, you've got to say no to it. You just got to stop the additional spending.
All right. Julie?
Excellent. Thank you, Steve. So just in regard to the budget or the border issue, a simple expression of support, a legislative resolution, that's a very simple way to express your support for something you are claiming to be very important. So sounds an awful lot like Washington talk to wish that away and explain that vote in that manner. Regarding the budget, North Dakotans have to live on a budget. My family makes a budget. We have a budget every month. We have to start by having a federal budget. It's just irresponsible that we budget the way we do in this country. I know the House has started the process this year. Give them credit. The president sent out his budget. It was, grew again way too much. So we first have to start with a budget, and we have to deal with, look at the discretionary spending, cut where you can. Are there areas where we don't need to be involved in anymore? Can we block grant things back to the states? Can we give more rights back to the states? Taking away, all of those things need to be on the table, and we have to deal with entitlements. Entitlements are 70% of the federal budget, 70%. So if those are always kept in a lockbox because they're too precious or too politically difficult to tackle, we will never get on top of this, ever. When I first started hearing about the federal budget problems, Kent Conrad was the budget hawk for North Dakota, and he talked about the Social Security fund being insolvent in 2033, and that was 20 years ago now, or longer. Now it's 10 years from now. So I have 3 kids. They're 22, 20, and 18, and we are handing this massive problem back to them if we don't tackle it. We have to start tackling that right now, and I will.
Rick, you were mentioned specifically. Julie addressed your explanation on the vote in the legislature. You got a minute to respond.
Yeah, well, it's trying to make something out of nothing. It's putting spin on her predecessor, the person who propped her up into this position so that they could get more status quo, big spending, big government Republicans in office, put her up to this. She's doing their bidding. I stand by what I did. I am not going to play theater with politics. I'm going to do the right thing. And sending a message to our delegation who already did the wrong thing was a silly waste of time. I was going to have no part of that.
One more.
Yeah, and so Rick.
Okay.
He said that to me.
Go ahead,
Said
Julie.
they were propping me up.
You got a minute.
So I personally take offense to the idea that I'm being propped up by anybody. And I think it's pretty sexist, Rick. So shame on you for that. I'm not propped up or being supported by anybody. I have worked my butt off in this state for 25 years advocating for conservative principles and getting results. And the reason why people support me is because I have a record of results and accomplishment, and I'm trusted. That's why people support me. They aren't propping me up in any manner. I can stand on my own 2 feet.
Rick still needs to answer the question, right?
Yes, yep. If you'd like me to repeat the question, I can.
Sure. I'll point out that calling somebody out for their games has no bearing on their gender. The males happen to do it the same. And so go ahead with the question.
Yeah, the question was federal debt now at $34.6 trillion. If we add $1 million of interest every 30 seconds, we do add that every 30 seconds. If you were king or queen for a day, what would you do to shrink the debt?
If I was king or queen, that's the good part of your question. I would do something on the order of what Javier Milei has been doing. I'd slash government. Vivek Ramaswamy looking at decreasing by 75% our federal employees. Something like that would be substantial. I'd like to get rid of the Department of Education, the Federal Reserve, the EPA, ATF would be great. We can get rid of a lot of these things. The SBA, the IRS. I'd like to abolish the IRS, replace it with nothing. National Endowment for the Arts. We can scale back DOT. I'd like to defund the FBI and the DOJ, who are weaponized against President Trump. I'd like to know how Alex feels about defunding the FBI and the DOJ as well. So these types of things, if I was king or queen, we'd be looking at an entirely different situation. There'd be a balanced budget amendment onto the Constitution. So there are these things that we can, not being queen or king, just being congressmen, we can start to move toward. We can look at defunding, getting rid of agencies and departments. We can look at trying to balance our budget. There are a lot of things we can do in a stepwise process that will be the benefit for future generations.
And Alex, you were mentioned there related to your opinion on defunding which specific agencies were you saying that you would be curious about Alex's opinion?
Department of Justice and the FBI.
Is this a rebuttal time or is this the answer?
Just rebuttal.
Okay. So, look, I think when people say defund, it comes from a lack of experience or understanding. If you want to defund like the leaders that are attacking Trump and the people that run those agendas politically, that's fine. But you're talking about the working folks down to the levels like our local FBI officers or people in the states, they're working hard. So if you want to redress it and look and clean it up, that's a good thing to do. And does the DOJ need cleaned up? Absolutely. Do I think somebody weaponized their leadership? Sure. But not the working folks. That's just not how it works. And if our state level, we don't trust our state enforcement guys and our federal enforcement guys and our federal workers, our GS-11s, 12s, and 13s, then you don't understand how it works because those people are going to work every single day.
All right, new question. And
New
what
question.
order?
Yep.
What order are we going in, Steve?
Back to you, Scott. And this question will be to Julie first. She will have the first answer here.
Question is on the pro-life issue. Julie, do you believe life begins at conception? And how will you talk to voters about the abortion issue?
Thank you for that question, and that's one that's near and dear to my heart. Again, as a mother of three kids, had 4 pregnancies, I do believe life begins at conception. I'm a strong pro-life candidate. I believe that the Supreme Court, the Dobbs decision, got it right, turning the decision back to the states and giving the states the ability to set their pro-life agenda. North Dakota has a strong pro-life record. I have been pro-life my entire career. My opponent, Rick Becker, has been very, very different on this position, has many non-pro-life votes in his record, including one that was he opposed abolishing abortion that could be used for gender detection and on genetic abnormalities. Just again, we have to be consistent. These are issues that are fundamental principles, and if we're going to declare our positions on them and declare ourselves to be 100% anything, we need to be clear about what we've done and where we've come from. And I have been 100% pro-life since I was in high school. So again, talk is cheap. You got to look at people's actions more than their words. And on this one, it's I have worked hard on pro-life issues, supporting the various clinics in our state to help support women in troubled pregnancies, to help support St. Gianna's pregnancy home. I've had family members who have had to stay there. Again, this is how we make progress on the pro-life issue, is we build a culture of life and work with others towards that end. And that's something that I'm doing, will continue to do, and look forward to do in this role in Congress.
Same question for Rick Becker. Do you believe life begins at conception? How will you talk to voters about the abortion
Scott,
issue?
Rick should have a minute to respond to Julie's comment
Go ahead
to
and
him
add that
about
on
the
if
way
you need
he
it.
voted.
Yep.
In some way, he should have a chance to respond to that as well.
Thank you. Yes, I am pro-life. I do believe life begins at conception, and my record shows that I am pro-life. Since 2014, I have been 100% pro-life. I had advocated for, been co-sponsor of, and testified on several bills that are pro-life. I have a 100% rating, pro-life rating by North Dakota Right to Life. In my first 2 months as a legislator, yes, I cast some wrong votes. I look back on those with regret and wish I could have done it differently. But at this point in time, there is no doubt I am the pro-life candidate. I think it's interesting that Julie wants to attack and go back to those first 2 months over 10 years ago where I cast some wrong votes, and admittedly so, open, completely honest. And but what we look at is Julie, in her blog, personal blog, in 2009 was dreaming and wishing Roe v. Wade was established law and we would accept it, and that women would have choice. She's pro-choice, and that somehow we could reduce abortion in other ways, but stood on the ground of let's just accept Roe v. Wade as settled law. That's in 2009. But we can come up to last month. If Julie believes, as she says she does, that life begins at conception, how can you be an advocate for killing preborn babies well into their second trimester when she says that she's for a federal law that would allow, I believe the quote was, abortions up to 15 weeks, 16 weeks, or, quote, whatever. So I don't know how you can believe a baby is a baby and still allow it to be killed into the second trimester.
Julie, you got a minute to respond to that before we go to Alex.
So I support a federal floor. I would support a federal floor, as do many pro-life organizations. A federal floor would eliminate the extreme states of New York, California, and their more extreme pro-choice laws that would allow abortion up to almost the time of birth or even after. And so a federal floor, 16-week floor, would be a move in the right direction for life in this country, because it would standardize that as the base, and other states wouldn't be able to have extreme positions on abortion. And so that is, in my opinion, a big win when it comes to pro-life issues nationwide. And then as long as you will maintain the right for states to go stricter than that.
We'll get Alex's answer to that last question on the other side of this break. We'll take about a 6-minute break here, and we will come back with more of our coverage of the U.S. House race among the Republican candidates for that on the June ballot. Julie Fedorchak, Rick Becker, Alex Balazs with us in studio today on a special edition of What's on Your Mind. Short time out, back to more of the questions. And by the way, keep yours coming at 701-237-1590. And we're streaming online too if you want to watch this. More after this. Scott Hennen and Steve Hallstrom back. We're hosting a debate between three candidates for the United States House race. It'll be on the primary ballot on June 11th. That is Rick Becker, Alex Balazs, and Julie Fedorchak with us in studio. We have one answer left on our question related to abortion. I'll restate that again. This is for Alex Balazs. Do you believe life begins at conception, and how will you talk to voters about the abortion issue?
Yeah, is that good right there? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good? Okay. So, yeah, I'm pro-life on this. It's pretty obvious. That's all conservatives ought to be there. I am birth to death on this. I think that we need to protect this and protect our conservative stance on this. We are under attack by the liberals on this. And I will just say to start with, you're going to be asked a lot on this. I do not support a federal ban coming out of Washington on this. I think that, yes, the Supreme Court pushed it down to the states. That's where it belongs. But more importantly, we consistently talk about federal overreach. It needs to be at the states, but we still need to have a strong opinion on it. So look, like President Trump, I'm a strong constitutionalist. This issue has been delegated, but what the Democrats have never done is support the mother and life, ever, throughout this whole thing. As a North Dakotan Christian, I believe in policies to support the family unit and provide support to parents. We've always been compassionate, and that's where this pro-life stance should be. But there's something else that we need to do. We've got to start looking at conservatives, and I'm not talking about entitlements and social programs. I'm talking about taking an equal amount of effort so that we take some of the punitive out of it and start caring for these mothers that need the help. I just don't believe that we're going to break the back of our budget by helping some mothers out of a crisis point and helping them have these babies instead of just putting a knife's edge on it and some teeth into the law. So yes, I think we need to move forward, but we can't divide ourselves as conservatives on this. We've got to go forward on it.
Next question, Steve.
Yeah, this question will go back to Rick for the first answer. Government, we all understand, needs to spend some money, but we've gone from a country that spends only on things that people can't do for themselves to a country that spends a lot of money on things that people want. What principles would you rely on when making spending decisions in D.C.?
That's a question that deserves a very long answer, but what I would get to is that the government's role should be limited to protecting life, liberty, and property. Now, we've moved very far away from that. I believe very much that there is a role for safety nets. I think those types of government policies are best when they're closest to the people, so local or state would be far better. What we've seen, unfortunately, is the increased dependency on government as federal programs have continued to just grow exponentially. And with that dependency, we also see loss of dignity. And we see government replacing religion. We see government replacing our neighbors. We see government replacing everything. It's all about being dependent on government. So I would like to see a respect for the dignity of the individual. And by the way we can do that is start to wind down some of these programs that go far beyond the very basic safety nets that are sometimes required on a temporary nature. I'd like to conclude this time, though. I'd like to go back to the abortion issue once more because Julie didn't answer. The voters of North Dakota want a pro-choice candidate. The voters of North Dakota want a pro-life candidate. I am 100% pro-life. Julie said in her blog that she wanted Roe v. Wade to be understood as decided law and that women would have a choice. Does she regret making that statement, yes or no?
So 1 minute, Julie, as a rebuttal.
First of all, I don't recall even what Rick is talking about, so I'm not going to respond to it because I don't recall it at all. But it is another example of how you just don't trust Rick. I mean, he's made up lies about me before. He made up lies on Joe Heiskamp's show last week, saying that my husband and I benefited in ways that we haven't, and it had an intention on buying land far in advance of a project coming to an area that we own land in, and he made it up. It's a flat-out lie, and I'm not going to stand for that. I'm not going to stand for being lied about, and it's not necessary. Like, we can talk about our records, that's fine, but let's not be making up lies.
Minute for you before we go back to the question.
Talk about that record. This is not a lie. It's not something that is made up. It's in your blog. It still exists. You're going to have to wipe it much better than you may have tried. It's your words in your blog. I encourage you to take a look at that.
All right. Who's next on the spending
Alex
question?
is on the question now of what principles would you rely on when making spending decisions in D.C.? Alex, so your turn on this one for 2 minutes.
Okay, so there's a whole discussion about how to cut budgets, and let's just discuss getting federal government business out of the states, right? So everything's pushed down to the states by the Constitution, except for very few things. So big mill, great big projects, though keeping those embassies open overseas, and then yes, there's some foreign aid issues that we have to deal with after we put America first. So how do you address that? How do you cut that down? So the number one thing is you've got to get the favorite programs out of government. Those are things that benefit people because they made a promise somewhere, they took care of somebody. Then we need to look at foreign aid. And I don't know if you remember this, but there was a congressman a while back who said we ought to have a little jubilee where we review all of our foreign aid and we pull it back for 1 year and we don't do anything. And who's ever our ally at the end of that year, we say, okay, we're going to take care of you. Maybe that's not just a bad idea, but I can name, not today, but we can get into this longer, a number of countries who we're giving foreign aid to that aren't on our side, period. We're just trying to court them so that China and Russia and other people don't step in. Maybe at some point we just say, nope, fish or cut bait. We're not going to give you this money this year. And I think that's an important place. So the principles are this: America's interests first, okay, and we take care of America. Then America's interests first overseas, whether it's minerals or allies or how to fight and what we're going to take care of. And then taking care of people, because we're Americans. We're not going to back off from helping people who are oppressed and are being killed by dictators. We're just not going to do that, okay? We have never cut and run. And you'll see that there's a lot of money to save in those if you follow those principles and get away from all the fluff and garbage.
Very good. And Julie, your answer on this question.
Thank you. I talked about this a little bit in earlier, but I do believe that we need to look at streamlining some of the federal programs, block granting as much as we can back to the states in various areas, eliminating the overhead of some of these federal bureaucratic agencies. I'll tell you one area. I know Rick Becker has been a budget hawk in the state, or professed to be, and he voted against most budgets, including my state budget. So we would have basically not had the Public Service Commission if Rick had gotten his way. And one of the areas where I will never cut back or save money is in our treatment of our veterans and those who have given their ultimate for our country. And Rick Becker voted against a bill that would have provided death benefits to the survivors of National Guard members in our own state who were killed in the line of duty. We can never repay our debt to people who die for our country. We can't ever. The very least we can do is to help their survivors. And Rick he might have been the only one, or just the one of a handful of folks who voted against that bill. And again, it's just that, like, we have to know what we're dealing with here. We can't just say nice things and pretend we're going to do something else. People have to be accountable for how they've served, votes that they've taken, and you have to know what you're getting here. Talk is cheap. Action is a lot harder. And I think it's, when we're delivering on our conservative principles, we have to have some things that are near and dear to our hearts at all times, and that is our veterans and taking care of those who have given their ultimate sacrifice for our country. So that's an area I would never cut back.
Rick was mentioned in the answer from Julie Fedorchak, so Rick Becker, you got a minute rebuttal.
Beautiful example of what the big spending rhinos in Congress, how they act, what they think, what they say, with Julie's words. What you have is an example. She said, I voted against her agency's budget. Well, it just so happened that she had unnecessary, duplicative money allotted for inspection, something the federal government already does, something that at the time the appropriations chair in the House was against. So yes, she wanted a lot more money in her budget. Yes, I voted against it. And what she's done with the veterans is the same thing that the weak-kneed rhinos do in Congress when we have omnibus bills. And there is a ton of spending on all sorts of things, and everybody is too chicken to vote against it because there are some good nuggets in there, and your political opponents will try and bring those out and say you are against those nuggets. Instead of having a backbone and saying, I'm going to vote no on this, let them take it back, separate things out, let's vote on them individually. What she's doing is trying to manipulate the listeners. I will not allow her to do that.
You obviously mentioned Julie. Rick mentioned you by name, so again, a 1 minute rebuttal for you.
Well, it's interesting to be called a rhino by somebody who has been a libertarian, a Republican, an independent, and now a Republican again. So who's a Republican in name only when it's expedient for him to try to win an election? Rick Becker, not me. I've been working and fighting for conservative values my entire career. So that's just the truth of that. And regarding the Public Service Commission's budget, our budget for rail safety, that's the program he's talking about, actually has decreased. Our rail safety program used existing funding, not a dollar of additional funding was ever spent on that, and we have reduced accidents on the rails in our state by 55%, 55% reduction in derailments and accidents in North Dakota since the beginning of that program. And this is on massive trains that go through the very center of every single town. North Dakotans support that program, and it's served them well and delivered results.
All right, next question is yours, and it will start with Alex Balazs in the middle this time.
The Trump administration proposed and Congress passed a 12-year incentive called 45Q to spur carbon capture technology in an effort to support modern agriculture and energy. It remains current law. Would you support and defend this tax credit? Alex, your question.
Okay, thanks a lot. All right, so are we talking just carbon capture or just the tax credit?
Both, if you'd like, but obviously 45Q is designed to incentivize carbon capture technology being developed.
Right. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff wrapped up in carbon capture. First of all, you know, one of the biggest uses for carbon or carbon dioxide that we're using up here in North Dakota is pumping it back down into wells because it's slicker and it increases the life of the wells and stuff. So if we're just talking about incentivizing industry to capture that, and it meets a national interest and it helps us defend our country and become energy dependent, then at times someone could argue that tax credits are good for those businesses because they need that. And I would have to say we'd have to look at it each individually. I don't know that those tax credits should be extended out if everybody's already making money on the deal. So that's you got to qualify that answer. You can't just come down with a soundbite and say, yeah, no, yes or no, I'm not going to do tax credits, because tax credits are very effective to make industry work. So the other piece of that is that I think this was a badly handled thing from the very beginning. It got conflated in all kinds of issues of eminent domain and whether we should do pipelines, whether tax dollars should go to businesses to build these things. And when that all happened, that was introduced by people who weren't from this state, and we actually had to have senior representatives from our state step in and quell the issue with the citizens who had land and talk to them and remove some of the people who were talking to them. So, yeah, I think that we need to start it over and look at it like this. It's a mission. If we need to have that for a state to do that and to run our energy system, then let's do that. If we need to effectively use tax credits to keep people here, then let's do that. And I'll give you one last closing on this. We lost a huge pharmaceutical company in the United States because one Democrat liberal senator decided he was going to pull their tax credits, and they went to him and they said, don't pull our tax credits. We can't afford to stay here. And we lost them right before COVID and the inability to make those pharmaceuticals. So that was a bad decision.
Who's next?
Julie is next on that question.
Yes, I would support the 45Q tax credits. First of all, for a couple of reasons. Energy and agriculture are our state's leading industries. They are absolutely vital to North Dakota. They are also vital to our nation. And this tax credit helps support both of those industries in important ways. First of all, the corn produced with the ethanol produced with corn for using carbon capture and storage has a 25% premium for the farmers. So the farmers get a 25% higher price for their corn when it's used in this way. That's huge. This product is going to be used to develop low carbon aircraft fuel. That is a brand new industry. It's going to be built someplace in this world. It ought to be in North Dakota. We have the greatest geology, and the resources to do it, both in terms of energy and agriculture. That will have like infinite amount of potential for our farmers to produce for corn for that purpose for decades. It's a huge, huge impact, billions of dollars of impact, and many, many jobs. And then finally, we need the CO2 for it has oil recovery. That's the only way we're going to get the maximum amount of barrels out of the Bakken is through enhanced oil recovery. And that's going to be the next way to do that is with CO2 injection. So it's going to be a beneficial use down the road I strongly support this. I think it's the wave of the future. It's one of the areas that gives me great hope for our state and our two leading industries, energy and agriculture.
Last person to answer this question, Rick Becker.
Yes, with regard to the 45Q tax credit, I'm adamantly opposed. I would have voted no. It's a scam. It's a sham. It's something to be ashamed of. The idea that you must support this incredibly huge new subsidized, taxpayer-subsidized program in order to be pro-farmer, pro-energy, pro-whatever is complete nonsense. I am 100% pro-farmer. I am 100% pro-fossil fuel. The 45Q tax credit relies on the belief that global warming is man-made and can be corrected by getting rid of carbon dioxide and burying it underground. You must believe that in order for this to make sense. And then further, that you must believe that it's okay to take billions and billions of dollars from the taxpayer and give it to private industry with this whole scam. They are lining up like pigs at a trough to get money from this whole scam. So no, I would have voted no against it. Enhanced oil recovery, love it. We're going to want that. We're going to need that so that we continue to have oil revenue for many decades to come. You do not need the 45Q tax credits to get it. In fact, the 45Q tax credits preferentially give more money for injecting it underground and not using it for enhanced oil recovery. And so therefore, it's completely counterintuitive to say that we want that because we want enhanced oil recovery. You can use CO2, you can use gas produced at the wells to enhance the oil recovery. There are a number of ways to do it. Currently, it's very experimental. There are a lot of unknowns. It would not even be in existence if not for the taxpayer funds in this 45Q system.
Next question, Steve.
Okay, next question will be to Julie. She will go first on this one. Responsible gun owners tell us on the radio almost every day that they are seeing their freedoms limited by gun control activists in government. How broad should the protections of the Second Amendment be?
The Second Amendment is a foundation of our country. It's a principle that really we do not and should not ever jeopardize. So my children ask me about, gun rights and gun issues. I think young people have lots of questions about this. And it's really important that we educate our young people about this issue correctly. Gun control isn't going to decrease gun violence. It just isn't. We know that's the case. There's a lot of issues contributing to gun control, and this is an easy tool of the left to say, there's a lot of issues contributing to gun violence, I'm sorry. Gun control is just an easy tool used by the left that sounds good but does nothing. But in fact, it's very dangerous because it jeopardizes one of our fundamental principles. We have to have citizens able to own guns, and not just for hunting. We have to have gun rights, and we have to be able to own guns so that we always have the ability to defend ourselves from any power, including our own government. So that is a fundamental principle, and I will not bend on that one bit in Congress.
Okay. Rick, you're next on this question.
Right. Second Amendment shall not be infringed. I have the strongest, well-known track record on Second Amendment rights in my 10 years as a state legislator. It was my bill that was introduced and passed that got us constitutional carry in 2017. My bill that was introduced and passed that made North Dakota a Second Amendment sanctuary state with the Second Amendment Preservation Act in 2021. I was the person who got up to slam down the red flag law that we were able to defeat in a vote, ironically, of 17 to 76, and say no to that because it was a clear infringement on the Second Amendment. So I am the go-to person when it comes to Second Amendment rights. I stand by that. I will continue to do that in Congress.
Alex, and you get the final answer on this question.
Yeah, this is an easy one for me. I obviously believe in the Second Amendment is an inviolate rule. We can't touch it. We don't compromise on it. We don't let the left do what they're doing right now, which is completely redefine what a weapon is or call something an AK-16 or an M47. I've heard them be so wrong, it's just ridiculous. We need to get that information out there. I agree that this is something that is a tool. We teach our kids this. When my daughter went to cotillion, before she could go, she had to learn how to shoot. So If there's one thing about gun control I do agree with, and that's we need to be really good on the front sight so we can hit what we're aiming at. But this thing has gotten so much press with these shootings that we're responsible because of the guns. And I got a good buddy of mine who says all the time, he says, he got a ton of guns down in the basement, and they're lazy guns because they never do anything unless you pick them up. So, as we go forward on this, we're going to have this fight, and we're going to hear it all the time through the news. That people are getting shot, and it's all because of the guns and the weapons and the rest. The truth needs to get out there, and we as conservatives need to hold the line on this, get the truth out to people, get them to understand it's a tool more than anything else, and we need that, not just for our common defense, but because it's a right that was written in our Constitution, and we're not stepping back from it ever.
We only have a minute left, but we have a listener that asked your position on whether an assault rifle exists. Do you believe there's such thing as an assault rifle? Each of you. Julie, you're first.
Assault rifles is just a marketing or a description of a certain kind of a rifle. So no, I think that's something that the left has used as a term to call things that they want to demonize.
Rick, quickly.
It's a made-up term.
Alex?
Yeah, it's a made-up term. They decided if it had a carrying handle and if it had a magazine and it could fire so many rounds a minute, then it was an assault rifle. The fact is that there's no actual definition of an assault rifle unless you go into the military and you say, this is a squad automatic weapon or this is a weapon that's made to assault a certain position. That could be any weapon in the hands of anyone who could handle it correctly. So no, it's made up, and that's another piece we got to educate.
Hour number one is complete in our U.S. House debate with candidates Julie Fedorchak, Rick Becker, and Alex Balazs. We'll take a short time out and come back with a full another hour on the flag. And you can watch this debate if you like, am1100theflag.com or am1090theflag.com. And welcome back. Scott Hennen and Steve Hallstrom. We are hosting a candidate debate for the candidates for the United States House, fresh off the convention last weekend in Fargo. Rick Becker is joining us, Alex Balazs, Julie Fedorchak, and your questions are pouring in. So we appreciate that on the big topics. We'll continue to move through these as quick as we can. We have 1 hour left. Steve, who is next to answer our question?
Yeah, Rick Becker will be the first to answer this question.
And this comes verbatim from a listener. Where do you stand on Ukraine? Our budget for Iraq was $9.6 billion at its highest in 2015, and a total of $85.48 billion from 04 to 21, compared to the $46.3 billion just from the 2022-24 military budget. Justify spending that much money to a country we aren't fighting an active war with and has admittedly been one of the most corrupt countries. How would you as a freshman House member go about putting America first, and what are your positions on Ukraine funding going forward?
Well, that's an excellent question. My record is very clear on this. My statements have been very clear. It's certainly fashionable now to say that as a Republican you would withhold or you'd be much more cautious regarding funding Ukraine. But over 2 years ago, I took a position that fighting proxy wars is not the wise thing to do. It gets us further and further involved to the point that we have to allocate so much in the way of resources and possibly even send troops over if we're going to accomplish that mission. We need to go in with a specific goal. Ukraine was, even at that time, well known to be very, very corrupt. The government is well known to be very corrupt. And yet, even though we were in debt, we were willing to take on more debt, a burden to our children and grandchildren, so that we could send money to Ukraine, no strings attached, no accountability, knowing that they were fully corrupt. I would have voted no against it. That's a clear and easy answer.
Who's next, Steve?
That would be Alex. Next on the same question.
Yeah, let's make no mistake. We're in this because Biden was weak from the very beginning. We wouldn't have had this invasion if Trump wouldn't have been in office, and wouldn't even be discussing this. We might be discussing how to send some wheat to the Russians so they could eat, maybe. But the thing is this. We can't oversimplify it by saying it's just a proxy war. We have the ability as Americans to do both things, or many things at once, and we've done it in the past. I am not in favor, and I do not agree with giving buckets of cash to any country without accountability. Let's just be right there. But there's lots of ways to support these guys. So I do agree with providing U.S. support to the Ukraine people and the fighters in the form of training weaponry. We can do this real well through our allies over there. We don't need to put boots on the ground, and we can do it very carefully with accountability and watch our money the whole way through. Yeah, it's easy to say they're corrupt, so don't give the cash to the leaders and the diplomats over there. Give it to the fighters and let them fight another country that wants to spread socialism and communism around the world. And they'll keep doing it if they don't get defeated. So everyone knows this who knows how it works for, overseas. I've spent a ton of time overseas, and I've seen their poison in different societies, and it is devastating to these countries that have socialism and communism laid over them, making everyone equally poor. 40 years of seeing this kind of experience, and I've been in these countries, and I've seen many Americans who've died fighting communism. We don't need to be there ourselves doing this, but we do need to support people that are going to be absolutely devastated. There'll be wholesale killing over there if we weren't supporting these guys. As Americans, we can do both. I said it before. So let's get deeper into it if we're really going to discuss this. Not the soundbite that says, oh, we don't want to spend our money. We don't want to waste our money. That's the important thing.
Julie?
This is another example of terrible leadership by Joe Biden and the threat that he is to our nation and to the world, quite honestly. So we do absolutely, and I apologize for my crackly voice this morning. I have a sore throat. It's been plaguing me all morning. So we do have to get, first things first here, get Trump back in office and work with him. And I believe with Trump, we will have a plan. We will have a plan for this and other issues in our overseas engagements. And I also want to say, so getting a plan and having a plan so we know what the exit strategy is on the front end and what our goals are, that's the vital for this and any other international engagement. But let's remember what one of the key pieces of this war is, and that is energy. This and many other conflicts internationally are over energy. The U.S. energy policy is backwards. It's wrong. We should be delivering on the energy, building, developing, and delivering the energy resources that we have in this country for Americans and for our allies overseas. And Biden has gone completely backwards on energy. The liberal lefts have demonized the energy industry in our country. We need to unleash our energy resources, be energy independent, and develop our energy resources and sell them and provide them to our allies and other countries throughout the world. And that will help stabilize the world. That's a very important leadership position that America must take, that President Trump will lead on, and that I look forward to joining him and supporting him on.
All right, next question. Alex, you are the leadoff hitter on this one. Many of our listeners feel that shutting down the federal government would be the right thing to do in certain cases to take a hard stance on spending. When do you think it would be appropriate to support a shutdown of the federal government?
Yeah, I mean, Congress has to do their job, right, and pass those 12 lines, first of all. And then we won't have a shutdown in government. But if we get to a shutdown in government, I think we need to take all the myth away from it that they talk about, which is if we shut it down, people are going to not get their programs run, and we're not going to be able to defend the country. It's just wrong. That myth that the Democrats use, and I guess some Republicans use too, that we have to agree and put big omnibus spending bills through just to keep it going, is just wrong. I've been in the government where we had shutdowns or close to shutdowns and continuing resolutions. I don't agree with continuing resolutions. And those shutdowns come because people literally weren't doing their jobs. So what does it mean? Some people go home, they identify a few people that are critical, and the job goes on. But the reality is that it's a political game that happens in Congress and on the Hill. It has nothing to do with the reality of whether we can actually fund the government and work. So yes, when is a shutdown appropriate? A shutdown is appropriate when someone forces an issue so badly against us that's completely against our conservative values and says, take it or leave it, you've got to do this thing and give me all this fluff. Then you got to stand firm and say, you know what? Go to your constituents and say, this government's going to shut down. And you'll be fine. Everything will work fine because it's down at the state level, right? And the federal government will be back there. And I've made this pledge in District 29. You've probably heard it before. We won't take our pay as congressmen or congresswomen when we shut down. We shouldn't. We don't need it anyway, okay? It's a lot of money. But we're not going to take it because you wouldn't get paid if you didn't do your job. And I think that's important. So, yeah, we should get into this more to really understand what a shutdown means. But no CRs. Get your budget job done and fund it the way you're supposed to.
All right. Julie?
This sort of policy and tactics that have been used over and over again are just another example of how Washington is broken. We have a budget process, and we need to get back to following the budget process. It exists. It's orderly. It's thoughtful, and that's the kind of leadership that I have provided in North Dakota for years, and that's the kind of leadership and approach that I will bring to my time in Washington. The problem is we send people there who are more interested in headlines, more interested in taking positions that are going to get them in the news than actually doing the real hard work of governing. And that's quite honestly what has motivated me to get into this job. I want to get out there and actually find solutions. We can have a budget. We do it in North Dakota. Most states have a balanced budget. I would support a balanced budget amendment so we can get back to having a balanced budget, doing budgets in an orderly fashion, and not getting to the point where we're passing major government spending at the end with 1,000-page bills, omnibus budget resolutions that nobody can understand. I wouldn't support those. And we just simply need to get back in the orderly manner of passing a budget and doing the business, the hard work that citizens are electing us to do. And that's what motivates me to go there and get to work. And that's what I've done here as well. So I think people can trust that that's going to be the approach I take.
All right. Rick?
Yeah, the idea of shutting down the federal government is not something we should be so afraid of. There are very few ramifications that are not, at the very most, very, very temporary and only a slight inconvenience. People will still get their Social Security checks. Federal workers will still be paid, albeit a little bit delayed. This aspect of should we shut down the federal government, I think, displays perfectly the lack of spine, the lack of fighters we have in Washington, D.C., because that's where you have some of the leverage. These people are making decisions on budgets, on spending, based on what the political ramifications are, because they're so afraid that they may be perceived as causing a shutdown of the federal government. They go ahead and vote for things that should never be voted yes on if you're actually a conservative. So yes, I would not mind at all if the federal government was shut down. In fact, we may all be better off if it was shut down a little bit more often. Now, I will point out that Julie says, and it was indirect at me, that she would not, she does not abide by the idea that someone is trying to want to make headlines. She doesn't want someone to make headlines. That's how she views standing up for principles, being willing to shut down the federal government. If you do that, you're just making headlines. That again confirms that she is solidly in line with the big spending, big government rhino Republicans.
Julie, obviously you have a minute to respond.
Absolutely, and I look forward to. So here's a deal with Rick. He loves to take these quote unquote hard positions, but what he doesn't do is he doesn't work with others to get people on his side with his positions, so you can actually make progress and get other people to support what you're trying to do. He served in the North Dakota legislature for 10 years and bemoaned the whole time that government was growing. What did he do about it? Did he build alliances? Did he build working relationships with folks to change that? No, he didn't. In fact, most of those people don't support him today. That's the problem. We can't send people to Washington who are going to be obstructionists and not build relationships with others to move on this. We have a country that's divided, standing firm in our positions and not trying to make progress and convince others is the wrong way. I will be not only a vote taker, but a vote getter, and so we can make advances in our conservative cause in this country.
Rick, you have a minute response.
Yeah, well, I've just heard Julie say that she is going to go along to get along. When she talks about not building alliances, I mean, I was able to pass several very important bills over the course of the 10 years. There was no way I could do that if I didn't build alliances. She references that she has more legislators that have lined up behind her than myself. I encourage your listeners to take a look. There are rankings for legislators. If you look at the average ranking for those that are supporting me, they are true conservatives. If you look at the list of the state legislators that are supporting her, they are clearly the rhinos, those that are the quote-unquote moderate Republicans, that if that type of philosophy gets out to Washington, D.C., that's exactly where we're going to see more spending, more inflation, caving to securing the border. None of that's going to happen because of that attitude of, I just want to go along to get along.
All right, Julie, 1 minute, and then let's try to move to the next question here.
That's a very interesting comment, especially considering that after Rick's antics last week at the Republican convention, where he wasted 1,500 people's time on spoiling the ballots at the convention so that he could look good for a few minutes while everybody talked about how they supported him. I had several of his supporters who have endorsed him come to me and say, that was terrible, that's not leadership. And I regret actually standing up and supporting Rick and endorsing him early on. So that's, again, this is a leadership issue. This is not really about positions or this or that, because we all share similar conservative values. This is about delivering results and leadership. And I'll stand on my record every day. I have 30 years of really good service in this state, delivering on conservative principles for the citizens of this state.
You were mentioned, Rick, again, so we're going to give you another minute here, rebuttal.
Well, I think, I feel bad for Julie. She expected to handily win the convention, and clearly the grassroots of North Dakota were not behind her. So I understand that she's bitter. And yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
Julie, quickly.
That's actually almost laughable that he thinks that I didn't have the grassroots support when I actually won the first ballot by 200 votes. So it's just, again, more gamesmanship, more evidence of why you just can't trust Rick Becker. He makes things up.
All right, we're going to the next question here, and this question is first for who, Steve?
Julie.
Julie, if elected, would you support Mike Johnson for Speaker?
I would support Mike Johnson for Speaker. I think he's stepped into a tough situation and shown good leadership qualities. One thing that that's a challenge in the situation in D.C. right now is when people disagree with somebody that's like, let's throw them out, and then we end up with a week or 2 weeks of chaos again, not making progress on important issues that the citizens send us there to work on. I thought Mike Johnson just in the last 24 hours heard the concerns on the FISA issue, changed his opinion, changed the direction, narrowed the time frame for which they're going to extend the FISA agreement so that if President Trump is elected, he can have his influence on that policy. And there again, that's leadership. I thought that was a pretty masterful way through that. And so as far as I'm concerned, Mike Johnson is doing a pretty solid job leading the House, and I would support him.
Who's next?
Mr. Rick.
So yes, the Mike Johnson as Speaker, absolutely a very, very difficult job, one I do not envy. I know that there must be give and takes. I'm obviously going to be joining the House Freedom Caucus. That's why I have so many congressional members of the House Freedom Caucus who have endorsed me, in addition to Senator Rand Paul and Vivek Ramaswamy and Thomas Massey. However, I'm very concerned that Mike Johnson has gone along with this idea of the continuing resolutions, the big spending. I had a lot more hope. Would I just willy-nilly want to vacate? No, I think we need to have a plan. It's always good to be planful, but I'm very disappointed in Speaker Johnson's willingness to spend more money, go further into debt.
So, yes or no, would you support Mike Johnson for Speaker?
Well, it depends who's running against him. That's impossible to say unless we know what the candidates are.
All right, next question, Steve.
Alex gets a
On this
chance
question.
to answer that final question.
Yeah, I support Mike on this. I think that we need to pay attention to the. First of all, I'm not in his shoes, so we need to get there and see what's been going on. A lot of balancing there. What I'm not going to do is have a conservative Republican circular firing squad where we shoot each other and give the Democrats the seat up there. So that's just not going to happen. It's easy to look in from the outside and say that, yeah, he put that omnibus through and he voted for different things. And we got to talk about this FISA thing a little bit and really get to the meat of it, because the Democrats under Obama and under Biden are the ones that abused FISA and really brought it into the limelight so that it could be used against the American people. And we need to call people out for what they're doing on that, because FISA was a tool that was designed very specifically to protect the United States and our interests. Abused, any tool is going to be bad that way. So we'll talk about FISA at some point and get into the meat. I'd love to do that. But yes, we as conservatives, if we don't band together on this, we literally will lose this. And that, whoever that fellow is, Jeffries or whatever, will walk in and run us into the ground. So yeah, let's stay together on this.
Okay. Next question, and Rick will get the first answer on this one. Some Republicans in Congress say it's now appropriate to charge Joe Biden with treason for how he has managed the country. Some say impeachment is the proper path. Others say those measures are just too harsh. What do you think should happen to Joe Biden?
Well, I'm not sure treason's in order, but I do think that he warrants impeachment. Absolutely. He's completely been derelict in his duties, obviously not enforcing as the executive branch. He's supposed to be enforcing law, and he's just outright ignoring it, flogging it, and doing something that's counter to what the law states he must. So I think there are abundant opportunities and reasons for impeachment, not the least of which is corruption, and I believe that Congress is currently looking at that. So I support impeachment, absolutely.
Okay. Alex?
Yeah, impeaching Joe Biden, wouldn't that be great? The bottom line is that, on a very serious note, he should be held accountable for 13 deaths in Kabul and the travesty that happened when we abandoned our forces and our friends and Americans over there. And I can list a number of other things aside from the fact that he's in China's pocket and he's taking money every single day, and so is his family. So I can't even trust his day-to-day decisions. Is impeachment right? You know, it's a done deal that the guy shouldn't be our president right now, but he is our president. And sadly, we have to take some stance to say he's wrong and he should be held accountable for it. How do we do that? We got to get together, first of all. It can't be a long, drawn-out thing where we can't, as Republicans, decide this guy's bad and people voting against it. The reality is that this administration has done more to harm America than any other administration, well, that I can remember. And they've done it intentionally, because you can't be this stupid. So yeah, should he be held accountable? Absolutely. But I'm leaning more toward criminal, because when he gave those orders to the military commanders to handle Afghanistan, he's responsible for those orders. Okay? And he did it, and people lost their lives. And more importantly, we lost status in America and a ton of stuff. So yeah, I would support all of that, as long as we can get the people's business done. If we can just get him out of office and get in there and do our work, that's fine. I don't want to slow it down, and I certainly don't want the current vice president, to step into leadership. So,
okay,
thanks.
Julie, you get the final shot at this question.
Well, I certainly agree with Alex on not wanting the vice president to step in. Yes, Joe Biden's leadership in this country has been just abysmal. I mean, he is our open borders. We've got criminals, we've got drug dealers, we've got human traffickers pouring over our border. 8 million illegal immigrants entered since he's been in office. Our energy policy is a wreck. It's dangerous to the citizens of our country. We're at risk of not having enough power to meet demand on any given day in this country. We've got this woke agenda that's been driven down the throats of our families, boys wanting to play girls' sports. It's a total disaster. So yes, I would support impeachment, but more importantly, what I think is going to happen quicker is that he's going to be unelected. And that's the ultimate saying, and that's the ultimate solution is this November, electing President Trump to take over and provide his leadership for our country moving forward.
Who's the next question for?
The next question now will be first to Alex.
Alex, give Kelly Armstrong a report card for his time in Congress.
Well, it's a tough one, because Kelly and I are going to be speaking at a town hall over near Bismarck pretty soon. So Kelly and I have had a number of discussions about his work in Congress, and I think some of his work's been real good. He's done a great job with it. We had some hard discussions about cutting off funding to Afghanistan, which is really simple for me to say because I wasn't in Congress, but I was pretty hot about it when we withdrew and there was still funding going over the Taliban. A report card. Wow. I stand here and get to throw the first stone, huh? So, as a congressman, I know a lot of people told me when I was on the campaign trail so far that they liked how he represented them. And he stood for what they wanted. And he's running for governor now.
Hold that thought. We're up against a break. You can finish. You got another 20 seconds left in your answer, and the other candidates will get it as well. Dr. Rick Becker, Julie Fedorchak, Alex Balazs, and the U.S. House debate on the flag. Don't go away. Our final segment of this 2-hour U.S. House debate with the candidates Alex Balazs, Dr. Rick Becker, Julie Fedorchak. I'm Scott Hennen with Steve Hallstrom asking the questions today, and thank you for your questions as well. They've been pouring in, and we'll continue to take yours if you submit a question at 701-237-1590 by text. You'll be in a drawing for tickets to Jimmy Fallon coming up on the 20th of April. All right, we are asking a question related to a report card for the current congressman that holds the seat these three are running for, and you have 18 seconds left in your answer on Kelly's report card. Alex Balazs.
There you go. Thanks, Scott. So, I Googled this because I'm super high tech, and the conservative think tank Heritage Action gave him a B and said he was an average congressman. So I'll tell you what, he's going to do a great job as governor, and I'm going to do a better job as congressman.
Julie, you're next.
So Kelly's worked hard for our state on a number of issues. He's been solid on the border issue, solid behind Trump. He has worked hard and represented our energy sector extremely well in agriculture. His leadership on energy issues is something that we must replace as a state, and that's one of the big reasons why I'm running, is I want to carry on the mantle of advocating for and defending smart energy policy for our country. Kelly has that understanding, and I will carry that same understanding forward. And so on all of those big issues, I think Kelly has represented North Dakota really well, and I would give him an A. And furthermore, I would also say that on those same issues, I would stand in the same way with as Kelly has on immigration, the border, Trump, budget, all those things. I think that Kelly has served our state well. I would seek to continue.
Rick, final answer on the Kelly Armstrong report card. You have a minute. 2 minutes, sorry.
Yeah, well, Kelly and I are friends. He asked me to give his endorsing speech in 2018 when he first embarked on going to Congress. I think he's done a good job. I think that he could have done a better job with spending, certainly. I do believe that he has the best letter grade out of our delegation, again, based on spending. That's such an important thing. We know that debt is our number one threat in the nation. And so I think he will do a good job. I think he'll do a great job as governor, and I strongly prefer to see that over a third Doug Burgum term. So, yes, Kelly has a passing grade.
Passing. You don't want to give him a letter grade?
It's all relative.
Okay.
Okay. All right, Steve,
All
you're
right,
next.
Next question, and this, Julie, you'll get the first crack at this answer. The left has introduced the term climate change as the label to describe weather dangers that now exist due to carbon dioxide emissions. Are they right? Is this all a hoax, or is the truth somewhere in the middle?
Thank you, Steve. I personally don't buy the whole climate change hysteria. That is something that the liberal left has pushed significantly, and there's a lot of contradictory science as it relates to that. So that's an issue that I think is constantly we're seeing it constantly in the Public Service Commission, and I've seen it in terms of the policies that have threatened our electric grid as a nation. We are looking today at not having enough power to meet demand on any given moment in 2/3 of the country, because the left has pushed this agenda so extremely and so quickly that we've retired far more resources than we've replaced with anything that's viable or dispatchable and needs to be available. So I strongly have been pushing throughout the country for a moratorium on retirements of our fossil fuel resources, because we can't afford to lose them. They're not being replaced fast enough, and they're being driven out by this extreme agenda. So we need to put a moratorium on these retirements so that we can, and in North Dakota, we can help supply the kind of energy resources America needs through our fossil fuel industries, coal, oil, and natural gas, and we should be doubling down on the development of those resources. And that's the kind of agenda that I will be bringing to Congress as a leader of this state.
All right, Rick, you're next on this one.
Yeah, climate change, and certainly man-made climate change that can be controlled by decreasing carbon or CO2 emissions, I think is a hoax. And it goes again to the 45Q tax credits. There's so much willingness to give up ground to the Biden administration and to the climate extremists. And we have to stand against that at all times. I did that as a legislator. I stood against subsidizing wind farms. I stood against all of the things that propped up these renewables that are unreliable and hurt coal, hurt our fossil fuel industry in North Dakota. At the same time that Julie, as Public Service Commissioner, was citing them, was permitting them. And so we have disparate things. We have a person who has a track record of fighting against the proposals of the climate change believers, and we have a candidate who is going right along with them. Julie even said that wind energy was a great balancer. It was good, clean energy and a good balancer to coal. That's exactly why coal is in the situation it is in right now. It's on the ropes because of people who are willing to cave to the Biden administration and the climate extremists.
You were mentioned, Julie, so you have a minute to respond.
Thank you. So on the Public Service Commission, I'm a regulator and a quasi-judicial member, and I'm obligated by law to follow the law of the state, and that's what I've done. And when wind development is legal in the state, there's a decent number of counties in the state that are advocates of it and proponents of it. And so I follow the law. I feel that that's the responsible thing as a conservative, to not insert my own policy beliefs, but to follow the law as it was written and developed and passed by legislators like Rick Becker, who, as far as I know, never proposed a moratorium on wind or anything of the nature. So the siting laws are spelled out by the legislators in our state, and that's what I follow as a public service commissioner.
Rick, you were mentioned so quickly.
Yeah, very quickly. I understand Julie wants to follow the law, but there is also discretion. We have examples, for instance, where she went against the chairman of the PSC in a vote that would allow wind energy companies to tack on the cost of those wind developments to the clients of the energy companies. That was against North Dakotans and in favor of the companies. That does not go along with what she's trying to portray as she was only doing what was legally required. She has been an advocate of wind energy, an advocate of renewables. The track record shows it.
A minute for Julie, because you were mentioned.
Again, as a public service commissioner, I have been a true conservative, following and being guided by the laws of the state as written by our legislators, our elected legislators. I feel that that's the appropriate way for any regulator, whether it's a state or federal regulator, to perform. And as a member of Congress, I will be holding the regulatory agencies like the EPA accountable for that type of behavior, not extending beyond the legislative directions of the elected leaders of this country. We've got wild, out of control regulatory agencies in this country developing extreme agendas like greenhouse gas emissions rules that are a huge threat to our state and our industries. And I have fought back on those and will continue to, and will hold those agencies accountable as a representative for North Dakota in Congress.
All right, Alex, your chance to answer this question on climate change. I'd be happy to repeat it if you'd like.
No, that's okay. I got her. Boy, I even hate to say the words climate change, but I'll bring it up because I'll answer it here. Up in the farm, we have a little library upstairs, top of the stairs, and all those little golden books in there. You know, you read those fairy tales, and someday there's going to be a little golden book called climate change, because they have conflated all this information so that they can raise money or steal money and make people rich on this climate change idea. So yes, does the weather change? Yes, do we see 100-year patterns? Of course we do. When my grandfather came to the farm first, he came to Church's Ferry on a ferry. That's 25 miles from Devil's Lake now. That's how far the water's receded. So sure, there were 100 years highs, and it's coming back again. If you've been up there, you see the dikes. It's slowly creeping back up. Maybe we'll see that. But let's not confuse those typical cycles we've seen in the United States with these claims by the far left, Biden included and Obama and the rest of the far left, which say, hey, you know, 1,000 years ago, the weather was this. Who was watching the weather 1,000 years ago except for Native Americans? And they were writing it down somewhere. So, look, this is going to hurt America. And the bottom line is we've got liberals saying if we do it first, someone else will follow. You really think China and India and the rest are going to follow and get rid of their stuff? So let's look at Poland. Last year or 2 years ago, they told the Biden administration straight up, we're starting our coal power plants again because we need to. We can't freeze this winter. Do I think we should look at alternative energy sources? Yeah, absolutely. We should look at it because nobody's better in America with this technology. Should we build new coal plants? Absolutely. Should we rely on our energy? We should not be energy independent. We should be energy dominant. This country can be there. So has it got a place? Yeah, I had solar panels one time on a hunting cabin. Okay, had a great place. It's not ready to run this country. And that's why we're competitive as a nation, because we have the power. No. I think climate, and I'll argue with anybody, and I got friends who believe in this climate change garbage. I'll argue with them, and we'll discuss clean air and clean water all day long, because that's America. But we're not going to give up our future.
Next question goes first to Rick, Alex, and Julie after that. What would you most look forward to with a Trump presidency? And is there anything about his reelection that would make you nervous?
Nothing would make me nervous about his reelection. What I look forward to most is an America First agenda once again. I'm hoping and I think that he probably learned lessons as far as who you can trust and not trust, and how seriously you must take the deep state action that so clearly undermined his efforts. But when we put America first, that agenda, Trump's agenda, in place, then we are going to see a return of the freedoms that we have lost during the Biden administration and even during the Obama administration. So fully support that. I have no qualms whatsoever. I did want to get back to climate change in my last moment here. It was mentioned that yes, people are getting wealthy off of these scams. And I want to point out that Julie has said specifically in an audio interview that the coal plants, if every single coal plant was removed, just done away with in America, we would not make a dent on climate change or the Earth's temperature. And then she turned around and said, but what is important is burying the CO2 from the coal plants. That makes no sense at all until you recognize that she has a contract in place for which she will be reimbursed significant amounts of money for burying CO2 under her land. So we have a clear discrepancy, someone who is not capable of recognizing when there is a conflict of interest.
Julie, you have 1 minute rebuttal before we go to Alex.
Here's another reason why Rick Becker is not capable of representing our state. It's true. You could shut down every coal plant in this country and you will not change CO2 emissions significantly in this globe. This issue is just like, there's so many falsehoods out there. At the same time, there are very serious forces coming against our fossil fuel industry. And to ignore them and pretend that we can just wish them away or stand, and say like, this isn't real, it doesn't matter, is irresponsible, because those forces are acting quickly and our industries are under threat today. So we must invest in technologies that help our resources compete in the market as it exists today in America. That's just responsible leadership, of which Rick will not provide for our state.
Alex, the next question is for you. What would you most look forward to with the Trump presidency? Is there anything about his reelection that would make you nervous?
No, there's nothing to make me nervous, except when we first get there, we've got a very short time to cut out this deep state rot. And so I've sent a couple notes to him. He hasn't answered me back yet, but I'm hoping he will, to say when we get there, you've got to start right from the beginning to cut out the top echelons. So other conservative Republicans who've gotten in there as president cut deeply, and they got rid of people who were working against them. So if anything, President Trump trusted too many people last time. He thought they'd do their job. He expected them to do their job. As bureaucrats, they didn't. They hurt him, and they worked against him. So I've been a Trump supporter from day one. I expect to work alongside him and save this country from Biden's attempts to destroy it. No, not his attempts. He's actually destroying it. And work with them. And I kind of got a list of people he can cut out from the very beginning. So hopefully I'll be standing there and we'll go through it and just get rid of some of this garbage.
And Julie, same question.
So I voted for President Trump in 2016 and 2020, and I'll vote for him again this election. What I look forward to is strong leadership. That's the trademark of President Trump. He will return order on the border. He'll be an ally on our American First energy and ag policy, which is vital to North Dakota. And I will be an ally for him on those issues and a strong advocate on the energy side in particular, but also with agriculture and the way those two are combined. But even furthermore, what I look forward to with President Trump is his influence on the Supreme Court, which continues to this day to be one of his most important legacies. His Supreme Court justices are overturning some of the most egregious weapons that our federal bureaucratic agencies have used against us, and has led to the out-of-control federal agency power that we have that is hurting our energy industry, that is hurting our agriculture industry and our producers, and that is having a lasting effect. So I'm confident that President Trump in the next term will appoint more conservative justices that will have a lasting impact on our country in a very meaningful and important way.
We've reached the time where we're ready for closing arguments. You each have 2 minutes. Julie, you are first.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Scott. Thank you, Steve, Rick, Alex. It's been a pleasure this morning talking about really important issues that our country and our state faces moving forward. We've talked about a lot of these things, and I want to just step back for the next minute and talk about these things as I see them, as from the perspective of being a mom of 3. Again, that's the reason why I got into this race. We have our way of life is in jeopardy in this country. We are being attacked at every angle by President Biden, who's been asleep at the wheel and has let our borders completely open and let criminals come into our country. We're being attacked by bad energy policy that is jeopardizing the stability and the security in our communities, our economy, and our nation as a whole. And we're being attacked by this woke far left agenda that is threatening some of the basic principles that we stand for. We as conservatives, we know that parents are the solution. We aren't the problem. We know that cops are the good guys. We know that boys should not be playing girls' sports. Yet the liberal left is taking these fundamental truths and turning them upside down. I am a conservative fighter. I have been working for the conservative causes for many years in this state and have delivered results. I'm the type of leader that is a worker. I'm not a talker. I want to get things done. That's the mom in me. I don't have time for drama. I don't have time for excuses. I want to get things done. I will be a worker for North Dakota and Washington, and I look forward to getting there. Please support me on June 11th. Thank you.
Alex Balazs, 2 minutes.
All right. Thanks, Scott and Steve, for hosting today. It's been a great experience for me. Julie, Rick, thanks for coming on today. We really got to do this more often. I want to thank the vets who paid for this today, because we're here today because we can talk freely and we can get together and not be persecuted. And so many of them, so many heroes that I know out there. This country being under attack, it's not just a joke. I agree with Julie, what Julie said. We'll barely be able to recover if we take a strong stance coming on November 6th and we win all the elections we need to do. And then our fight's going to be even harder, because we do have people attacking parents, attacking all these things that we value as Americans. One thing you should take away from this today, I feel, is I have the experience and know-how to close our borders and fight the crime and set policy that's going to reverse this inflationary policy that Biden's put in place that's robbing our pockets and taking from our people. That experience matters up there. And this other piece is, I think I can rise above some of the stuff that's happened at the state, some of the other issues that are going on, and maybe provide the leadership. And you got to decide. I'll be talking to you on this road when I'm driving around. It's not an easy choice, because you got friends in this fight. But we're going to pick the best person going forward. In North Dakota, if this is a football game and you like somebody a whole lot, you're not putting him in the fourth quarter because you like them a lot. You're going to pick the person who's going to win the game. So I'm asking for your support, obviously. We have a lot more to go on this to get to June and then November to win overall. And I'd like you to go, I invite you to join me at alexfornorthdakota.com. And also, I will be over when we're done here at the McDonald's on 39th Street at noon for lunch. So come and shake hands and talk to me. Thanks.
Rick Becker, 2 minutes.
America is at a crossroads. There's only one thing we can do to turn it around, and that is to send fighters, principled conservative fighters, to Congress. I am 100% pro-life, 100% pro-farmer, 100% pro-gun, 100% pro-border wall, and 100% Trump. There is a reason that I have endorsements from Senator Rand Paul, Vivek Ramaswamy, Representative Thomas Massey, and 8 other members of the Congressional House Freedom Caucus. When you send me to Congress, you will get someone who will be a fighter, who will never compromise on principle, and who will never back down. It is too important to have anything less than that.
All right. Anything else you want to add, Rick? Because you left a lot of time on the table, but
I'm a conservative, Scott. I conserve time as well as money.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. We appreciate it very much. Your websites for folks that want to find out more information, Julie?
Sure. Julie, the number 4, ND.com.
Alex?
Alex for NorthDakota.com.
And Rick?
RickBecker2024.com.
All right. Thank you all very much. Steve, any final thoughts?
I just want to say thanks to all of you. You all probably get there a little bit differently, but you're in this because you care about things that conservatives care about. And you've gotten, as Teddy would say, off the sidelines and you've gotten into the arena. And we are thankful for people that have said we need to fight what's happening in Washington and get involved and make a difference. You're not just talking about, you're doing it. And we really appreciate that. And thanks for being here today as well.
And thank you as well to our listeners. We appreciate this. There will be another House debate with the candidates prior to the June 11th primary. That'll be early in June, so stay tuned for more details about that. We'll also be hosting a debate between the gubernatorial candidates, Tammy Miller and Kelly Armstrong, as well, on this very same format. And you can watch it. You're going to listen to it on air. We appreciate you all. Thank you for listening. That's a wrap. We'll see you tomorrow, actually Monday, on What's on Your Mind. Bye-bye.